Welcome back to Scoundrels Inc., another Star Wars podcast. I am Frank Janish, and I am here with Brandon Hanna and a very special guest. You might know him as Rogue Leader. His name is Andrew Dimalanta, former, or I guess still in perpetuity, Schmodown Star Wars champion. Andrew Dimalanta, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's been quite a while.
Yes, it has.
You are, in fact, the last Star Wars Schmodown champion in the history of the game. You, in fact, played your wife Nikki for the championship, and now she has to look at that belt as a daily reminder.
She refuses to touch it. She was like,
I'm still to this day?
To this day, she's like, I'm never touching that thing.
Wow.
It's like, we have it. It's here. It's not going anywhere.
That's very funny. No, Kevin, this week he had to cancel last minute. He has, life health issues. He's all right, but hopefully we'll see him back next week. Brandon, how are you doing?
Doing all right. As you can see, I just got back from a quick vacation to Niamos. Thankfully, I wasn't detained by any stormtroopers while I was there, which is
Security
good.
Jords.
Yeah, I don't think I could cut it at that prison that Cassian went to. But best arc of the series, though. Am I right?
Sure.
One way out.
One way out. Let's see here. Wanted to talk about. Basically, I want to talk to Andrew about his overall thoughts on the Acolyte series, because that's what we're here to talk about. Episode 6, titled Teach/Corrupt. We're back to the two title thingies, two word titles. Andrew, we're on episode 6, but episodes 1 through 5, how have you been receiving the show, watching the show? What are your thoughts and overall feelings up to this point?
Overall, it's fine. It's been it's been good. It hasn't. I've been waiting. The entire time was waiting for like something like to really hook me and grab me. And luckily, that happened at episode 5 for multiple reasons for me. But like for the most part, it's like I have my issues with like the pacing, the editing, the writing's kind of like it's a little flat sometimes. The acting the same. But for the most part, it's like it's a show. It's Star Wars. It has lightsabers. I can't. Not like things that has lightsabers in it. But then episode 5 comes along and it's like, okay, if you didn't like this show and you were just like hating on it for no reason, like watch episode 5, because that's where like the meat of it is, and that's where like everything goes down, and the big reveal of who the big bad is, which for me was like I was hoping for Mandy Jacinto to be the guy.
Yeah.
Like they announced the cast. I'm like, oh, cool, Filipino guy. Yes, in Star Wars. I hope he's like a Jedi or something. Then they did the whole bait and switch on me. It's like, oh, he's just some bumbling idiot that, this helps. Who's it, May out, and then the whole time I'm like, he's totally the Dark Lord. He's totally the bad guy. They're not doing a really good job of hiding it. Even so, the whole reveal in episode 5 with like Jackie falling in front of him. I was like, that's an amazing reveal, because for the most part, you're probably like, we all know it's him, and like they don't try to, like I said, they weren't really hiding it. They weren't trying to hide it all that well, but like the whole like she's an actual curtain falling down in front of him in the pose. I'm like, yes, and like even before the series dropped, I'm like, whatever this guy's costume is, I'm buying it from my next cosplay, just because I look like him. That's all I need. And like, thank God he's like a Darkside user with a lightsaber with a simple. I love how simplistic his outfit is. Not a huge fan of the helmet, but the use of the helmet I'm really digging. But overall it's just like it's a fine show. Episode 5 really hit me hard. Like I said, there's a couple of things here and there that's like I wish they could have done this better, and the writing, the acting, the editing for the most part. But like overall, it's like it's kind of, I said it on another show. It's kind of like how my feelings towards the prequels. It's like the overall story. It's like I'm really intrigued with like what did they do? Somebody did something. We gotta figure out what they did. But like the execution of it all, it's kind of like
Sure.
So yeah.
Where would you? Maybe this is too early to ask. I don't know. You can say, I'll save it for a later date. But where might you rank this series thus far amongst the other Star Wars? Or is it too early? You want to reserve?
It's too early to tell, because I do feel like, because this episode 6 was kind of like compared to episode 5. Like I said, 5 is just like everything was done so well for me, and 5 is kind of like back to like, oh, okay, it's all right. But like I want to wait for the big reveal because there's like they said it's a murder mystery type thing. Like what did they do? We still have no idea what happened. Like I want to wait for that reveal because if something big happens in the last episode, it might change my perspective on the rest of the series. So I want to wait. I want to wait because like as of right now, it's like right where like Book of Boba Fett is for me right now. Like not like high on my list, but like it's a little lower on the list. But like I said, if something big happens in the next 2 episodes, that might like catapult it up a bit.
That's a very mature response, Andrew. I'm not sure I was expecting.
Woke Disney. They're ruining Star Wars. Need sunglasses.
The way the fandom is these days, you just never know.
I have my thoughts on the fandom. It's just like.
Yeah, it's rough out there. It's rough out there in those streets. But let's get into the actual episode at hand. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about it in sections, and we got to start with Khmer and Osha, that section of the episode. I will say right off the bat, I feel like this could have been 2 separate episodes of you have the Osha Khmer. That could have been all one episode, and I think it would have been fascinating. I mean, this section to me is the most fascinating part of the episode, and then obviously then you would have Sol and May, and then the Vernestra stuff, the Jedi Council, Jedi Order stuff as another episode. But they combine it into, and that's kind of my biggest criticism of the show. Brandon, do you have any criticisms of this episode, or what are your overall thoughts coming out of episode 6 here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I have any criticisms. I walked away with like a lot of excitement and like speculation of where things could go next. I think overall I agree with Andrew about like the pacing and like the editing of the show in general kind of being off. Part of me wonders if like some of the acting is stiff on purpose, if it's like Leslie's way of being like, oh, this is my love letter to the prequels, and George says this is how Jedi talk, so this is how they talk, like this. They have no emotion at all. So I don't know. To me, I'm like, okay, like I'll cut them some slack there. It's a creative choice. Whether or not you agree with it, I don't know. But but this episode in particular, I really enjoyed. I think I agree with you. The stuff with Khmer and Osha, I found really fascinating. Specifically, like little bits of details we're starting to like learn about Khmer and what's going to happen when Osha puts on this helmet and things like that. But the May and Sol stuff, I think, is good too. I was wondering how long it would take Sol to figure out that that was May.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, no complaints really. My guess just the episode was too short. It always like the episode ends and every week episode ends and I go, oh, what the hell? Like I got to wait another week now. Like, so,
yeah, I think for an episode particularly like this one, I think I'm not really a stickler for runtimes. It is what it is and it's fine. But actually for this episode, I thought, oh, this one should have been a little bit longer just because of the things that we're dealing with, and obviously the corruption, if you will, with Khmer to Osha and everything that he's putting on her and having her deal with and kind of confront, if you will, in some respects. I thought we could have really spent a lot more time with them, and like I said a little while ago, I think this could have been its own separate episode, and that would have done more service to these characters and to Osha's, I think, inner conflict of how she views the Jedi and now what Khmer is presenting to her. Andrew, what are your kind of just general thoughts about how this relationship has been playing out and kind of his philosophy, if you will, that he's trying to, I guess, in a way, instill or bestow upon Osha, and kind of where she's a little bit in this predicament of, when she follows him to the pool, where look, it gets extremely naked and horny. Let's be honest. The dude was hanging brain right in front of Osha, and I'm like, wow, Leslie really was like, we're gonna do this, and I'm like, damn.
I showed that scene specifically to Nikki because she has been watching the show, and she's like, maybe I should watch this show. It's like, ooh. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It feels very like Kylo and Rey relationship to me, like very like you see one side of it, and like they're almost like flirty towards each other.
Yeah.
Like a master trying to get a pupil type of deal. I agree with you. Like their part of the episode is the most intriguing out of everything. Like the whole like the May and Soul part was like more of like a tense, like, is he gonna find out? When is he gonna find out? How long is this gonna play out? But the whole Chimera and Osha thing was like the most intriguing to me, because it's the master toying with his potential apprentice type of thing, trying to lure her in, like show her all of her weaknesses and insecurities to get her to turn. I really like that little cat and mouse game. But like, I think the thing that stood up to me for this whole sequence with Chimera and Osha was the helmet. Like, because we got confirmation of what it's made out of and why he uses it. I think that's the dopest thing ever. Of the whole, like, it cuts his senses off, and like he's like totally blind to the outside world. It's like, it's just you and the Force. It's like he's basically taking everything that he learned. We find out, spoiler alert, that he used to be a Jedi. Something that he learned as a Padawan. It's like, don't trust your eyes, don't trust your senses, cut yourself off, and trust the Force. And he took that to a whole new level with the Darkside. Yeah, and it's like, that's really cool. Like, I've always wondered, because we sort of got a glimpse of it with wow, his name just fell out of my head. I'm a Schmodown champion. Chirrut in Rogue One, where he's blind, but he can totally like use to a point uses the Force to fight. It's kind of like that, where he doesn't rely on his other senses to do what he wants. To fight and to combat all these and just wipe the floor of everybody. It's like, I thought that was the dopest thing ever. Like, he purposely cuts himself off from the outside world to connect better and to use the dark side more efficiently, just because of he wants to get that extra bit of edge to it. So I thought that was the thing that I took away from it. Was like, that's why he wears the helmet. It's not just to like look like to hide his face or to look menacing. It's there for a complete reason. Yeah, that's a great point. Like, there's a specific purpose in terms of he's using it to further enhance his anger and fear, because he talks about it's whatever you bring inside that helmet is what, he says that to Osha, and he's obviously bringing his anger, his passion, his fear into that, and that allows him to feed more off the dark side and basically, get the upper hand on the Jedi in Episode 5, which, obviously he kills all of them except for Sol and Osha. Brandon, what are your thoughts on what transpired at the bathing pool and thereafter with these two characters?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see this perspective, because like we don't know really if he's like a Sith or not, but he is very much in with the dark side, and to kind of like see that perspective on like the Force and that point of view, and almost like he's trying to, I don't know if he's trying to like trick Osha into believing that she's making all of these decisions on her own. He's like, hey, you have free will to do whatever you want. I'm not like the Jedi. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And it's like this manipulative game that like the Sith in general like to play. And just seeing that perspective, because it's like, he probably doesn't view himself as evil. He's just like, I just want to do my thing. I'd like, if I kill people, I kill people. But I'm not trying to take over the galaxy or anything. So it's I think it's just like a really cool and interesting dynamic. And I don't know. Do you guys think that they're on Octo or a different planet?
It definitely looks like Octo, but at the end, like, I think a dead giveaway would have been like, hey, there's porgs. Right. There's a new creature. I haven't looked up what those creatures actually are. I don't have to study anymore, so I don't care.
There is an article out on Collider by Maggie Lovett, who did an interview with Leslie Headland, and in that interview, she explicitly states it is not Octo, and and also after the episode aired, I was on Twitter, and a lot of people pointed out that it could be another planet from Legends called Beldemnik, and the synopsis on Wikipedia reads as such. Beldemnik was an ocean planet adorned with rocky tropical islands in the Backfrosten system of the Oral sector, located within the Outer Rim territories. The hostility of its native conmate species, together with its extremely harsh climate, discouraged most people from ever visiting the planet despite the beauty of its giant rock cliffs, pristine beaches, and vast azure oceans. It was mostly of interest to cartographers, xenobiologists, and fisherfolk until knowledge of the planet's rich deposits of Cortorsis ore fell into the hands of Sith Lords Darth Tenebris and Darth Plagueis. So obviously, in Chimeras Cave, we see that Cortorsis
that
vein, right? And so people started pointing, hey, this could be Beldemnik, this could be tying it, because everyone's wondering, are we going to tie this to Tenebris? Are we going to tie this to Plagueis? And this is a Legends thing. This plan was actually first seen in Tartakovsky's Clone Wars in Chapter 22. So I'll have to go back and watch that. I have to do my yearly rewatch of Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. I haven't done that yet. So I'll have to look out for this planet. But I thought that was interesting because also in another interview Leslie Headland did, she talked about, or someone asked about more Legends connections, and she's like, yes, there will be more, but we'll have to talk about that after the series. So, I mean, obviously that could have been alluding to a Plagueis or Tenebris, but obviously I think this planet could be part of that, and I think that would be pretty cool. Do you guys have any thoughts on this possibly bringing in another thing from Legends into this show and making it canon?
Yeah, I think it's cool to see. Like, of course, he would be on a planet that has Cortosis naturally on it, and that connection to Tenebris or Plagueis. That'd be cool to see how that potentially pans out in the next 2 episodes, if at all. So, yeah, I don't think it's cool. Part of me was like kind of bummed. I'm like, oh, I wish it was Octo. Like, imagine, like they go back to like the actual like Jedi Temple. We see a couple porgs. It'd be nice.
We would never hear the end of it though. Like, oh, of course he has to be on Octo. Ruining Star Wars. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting. I think if they are to bring, like, for the most part, the way they've been bringing Legends things into the canon, like, they've been doing it pretty well. Like, the way that they brought Thrawn in and all these other small little details, like, oh, it happened to be this small little thing in Legends. Let's go ahead and bring it back in. It's fit into the canon really well. And fit the story that it's being told in.
Yeah, Cortorsis.
So if they can, if it seems like makes sense. I think it'd be really interesting to do that because like everybody's been crying for Plagueis for the longest time anyway. Yeah. So it's like, well, here you go. You wanted him.
He is legit canon. Tenebris, he's on the fence, I guess, at this point, and Leslie could go that route with this show. Maybe not season 1, but maybe season 2. Who knows? I did see someone on Twitter theorize, well, what if the Sith called it Beldemnik, but the Jedi called it Octo, and it's actually the same planet, but we're in a different area of the planet because
that would be
powerful light, powerful
sick.
Dark. I mean, that's a pretty cool idea. I don't know who said that out on Twitter, but that'd be pretty cool. Because the Jedi and Sith, like, they're like, we're calling it this one thing, and you guys call it, So
that'd be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool. There's some lines that Chimera drops on Osha and some interactions that I kind of want to get your takes on. When Osha first, is talking to Chimera at the baths, at the pool, whatever, she asked, "Did you kill Sol?" He says, "No." "Did you kill May?" He says, "No." And then he goes, "Interesting you asked about him first, though. He taught you the Jedi arts, but he's more to you than that. A special relationship, isn't it, master and pupil?" And I feel like he's just really laying the groundwork of to try and drive a wedge between her and Sol. And it's interesting. He goes on to say, or Osha goes, "If you keep me here, Sol comes to you. He found me before, and his strength in the Force is very powerful. You think that's his strength?" Chimera says. "That's your strength in the Force, Osha. Someone ought to teach you that." And I'm like, man, this dude is like, you don't need, Sol shouldn't be the one to dictate how powerful you feel in the Force. You're already strong in the Force, and if you come with me, you have like untapped potential that I could bring out in you and show you a different way to obtain that power. Because then he later goes on to say, the Jedi, you have to, Osha talks about, you have to train or it fades away. And he's like, yeah, that's for the Jedi way, but there's another way. And then Osha's like, oh, you mean the dark side? She's like,
straight up says it.
Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on like these lines that Chimera is just peppering in there. And I don't know if I would straight up call it manipulation, but he's definitely, I feel like, driving a wedge to try and separate her from what she's, known, and try and open her to his way and hopefully pull her over. That kind of seems like what is happening here, even though it's not super overt, but it's still like right there on the surface, I think. Andrew, any thoughts?
I think like the whole of like, hey, you need to train to like, or otherwise it fades. Like I kind of read that like there's something nefarious going on. Like there has to be a more reason of her like I stopped practicing. That's why I can't connect to it.
Yeah.
Type of thing. There has to be something. I thought that like they did something to her and without her knowing. Like the Jedi, like she's leaving the Order. We have to prevent her because like in the past couple episodes they were worried about like rogue factions of Jedi splintering off and training other people. I'm wondering if somehow they severed her connection to the Force to make sure that it wouldn't happen. So I'm like, when she said, "Oh, if you don't train it, it fades," and maybe that's what they told her, but they did something to keep her away from using the Force and creating rogue factions. That's how I read it. I was like, that seems a little too obvious. Like, oh, if you don't train, you don't. If you don't use it, you lose it. Type of thing. It's like,
right.
And it's like from everything we've seen in Star Wars, like that's not always necessarily the case. Like sometimes the Force will speak to you in different ways,
right? And
sometimes it doesn't speak to you in a moment because you don't need it. But then in a dire situation, it automatically just, it like a light bulb goes back on, like with in Ahsoka with Sabine.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't connect with it for some reason, but then in a dire need, it just came back. It came to her, and she was able to wield it like a pro. Like she's throwing things across the, she's throwing Ezra into the Star Destroyer and stuff like that. So it's like there has to be something more going on. Like there's no reason for like, because we've seen people like us, like who is it, Asajj, Ahsoka, that have left the Order and they continue to use the Force, and like they're not like training every single day, but like they still have a connection to it. They're still able to wield it. It shouldn't be. It should be the same for her. Like why would it? It can't be just that easy. It's like, all right, I stopped practicing because I left the Order, so I stopped practicing. Now I can't connect to it. So I'm thinking there's something a little bit more, because like from the past couple episodes, something big happened. Something that the Jedi did. And they're trying to cover it up. They don't want anybody to know about it. They don't want, especially Osha and May, to know about it. So something deeper is going on, I think, with that. And Chimera's trying to allude to it and making her, because he can very easily. I think he knows everything that happened. He just wants her to discover it, because if he tries to tell it to her, he's like, "No, you're lying. Why would I trust you? You're this Darkside user." If he lets her discover the whole truth, then it reigns truer with her, and I think that's what he's trying to do. It's not like he's trying to goad her into anything. He wants her to discover it for herself.
Yeah, because I think that's a more powerful tactic, to let someone discover it as opposed to being told to it, because then it feels like you're forcing it onto someone. But if you lead someone down this particular path and then they come to the realization themselves, it's not, they don't feel like it was forced on them or manipulated into it. They feel like they've had an aha moment all on their own, and in which case this would benefit Chimera, since he says he's looking for an acolyte, a pupil.
It's the whole like Ben Solo thing in The Last Jedi, when like everybody's telling Rey certain points of view of the story, and then when they find the whole truth, it's so much more like, why did it happen? Because Kylo tells Rey, it's like, this is what happened. She's like, no, you're lying. Like, why would I trust you? You're obviously lying. He already told me the truth. And then she really discovers the whole truth. So I think I really think that's what's going on with these two. The parallel with the whole, like, it's like a Rey type thing.
Brandon, you're a big fan of The Last Jedi. How do you feel about the Reylo comparisons here with Chimera and Osha?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like it's like a similar vibe. Like Planet looks exactly like Octo. Osha's outfit is kind of similar to like Rey's.
Yeah, like
a little bit. Yeah, the sleeves. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Chimera shirtless.
Shirtless Darkside user,
right? Yeah. Check. Yep.
And he's definitely trying to turn her. And I think, unlike Rey, I think Osha is a little more maybe open-minded to seeing what this guy has to say. That's why we see her like put the helmet on at the end of the episode. She's like, "Oh, I'm not saying I'm going to turn to the dark side, but I mean,
I'm going to take it for a spin around the block." Yeah,
let's see. Maybe they are hiding something from me about my past that I'm trying to And I'm sure that like some version of that is going to happen. There's going to be something that the Jedi hid from Osha that she didn't know.
Yeah,
So,
because
whatever
there is
version of that.
this interaction where they're like outside the cave, and Chimera's like, "Why do you?"
Another cave. There's always caves.
Yeah. Well, he's like, "Why aren't you a Jedi, Osha?" And she finally, with the lightsaber in her hand, his lightsaber in her hand, she kind of gives into that anger and snaps, and she's like, "Because I failed." So yeah, I think, why does she feel like she failed? Because she couldn't detach from what happened on Brendok, or because everything wasn't fully disclosed to her? She doesn't have any type of closure or full understanding of what happened on Brendok all those years ago, which we'll talk about when we get into the Soul May part of this episode. Yeah, I just think it's really, really interesting, kind of how Chimera is. This dude has like 3 different personalities. He's kind of psycho if you really think about it. When you first meet him, the bumbling idiot, and then he's like this Sith Lord wreaking havoc on the Jedi, and now here he is with Osha in the cave, and he's just like, there's another way you could access the Force. You want to give it a try? Also, here I am, fully naked in front of you, completely vulnerable. See, you're fine here. I'm not a bad guy. I thought it was a really interesting kind of line he gave Osha about, you're wondering if it's honorable to kill me this way. Back on the battlefield, it's legit, but hours later, it's vengeance. And I was like, and it's like these things that he's peppered into Osha. I'm just like, man, he's just like, pow, pow, pow. Like, what do you think about this? And now she's all over the place, I feel like. There was what the other line was that I wanted to ask you guys about. The scar on Chimera's back.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. It's really interesting because this kind of bleeds into, I guess, some theories one might have. I guess we can kind of, merge those 2 sections, if you will. Brandon, you said you had a lot of theories. Is this part of one of your theories that you had coming out of this episode?
Yeah.
That everybody doesn't feel like thinking about,
Yeah, it was this. I mean, this particular one was more so like after like a few discussions with people and reading some other things online. They made a point to show Vernestra finally used the lightsaber whip, even if it was just to kill a bug, and it was like, oh, that's what we were all hyped up for. It was like, all right, cool. But then they made a point to show that she has that weapon in the same episode where they show the scar on Chimera's back, and it was like, maybe that scar is from a lightsaber whip, and could he have been Vernestra's apprentice at one point? I don't know. Do we canonically know who her master is? Could he have been her master? Because I don't know. I'm kind of convinced that he's a little older than he looks. For whatever reason.
Is Vernestra the prodigy Jedi?
Yes.
That like immediately goes from like Padawan to knight or something?
I'm not super familiar with the High Republic, but I have heard like she is like a prodigy of sorts.
Yeah, like she got knighted at like 12 or something. Like really, really young. So that might line up.
It'd be interesting. I mean, I don't know where her arc is within the book series right now because I haven't read any of them yet. It is interesting, when Chimera's like, yeah, I was a Jedi, and Osha's like, I've never heard of you. He's like, it was a long time ago, a really long time ago. But like, how long is a really long time? Because dude, you look like 20 something. Not that much older than Osha would be or May would be. But I don't know. Darkside is a pathway to many abilities some would consider unnatural.
Exactly.
If that's, if there's a Tenebrous connection, maybe is it like slowing down aging for? I presume he's fully human. He doesn't seem like he's half human, half something else. I don't know. So it's a really interesting line. I hope we kind of figure that out. But I am on that boat of it kind of points towards that. Chimera was an apprentice to Vernestra at some point in time and discarded, as he puts it, thrown away. Andrew, you were on that same line of thinking?
I did. I didn't make the connection with the scar on his back, the light whip.
Yeah.
But now you said it, I was like, that makes a lot of sense because she has this one line when she's like investigating what happened of like something to tip the scales.
Yeah.
And, like she knows something. Something's up with her. She knows she's experienced like because she's examining the entire battle. It's like there's recognition in her eyes. Like, I've seen something like this before. This is like, this fighting style is not.
Because when Maug is describing it, it seems like she's like, sounds like
She's
someone
what
I
do you
know.
Yeah, it's like, what do you see? It's like she's asking the other Jedi to confirm her suspicions. It's like, yeah, I've seen this before. So there is definitely some kind of connection there. I just, again, we gotta wait until to see what it is, because when I first saw that, I was like, maybe it was his old Sith master and that tossed him aside, and now he's looking for an apprentice to overthrow his former master. That's what I thought of it. But now that this whole other, like, with that line that Vernestra said, and that whole the deal of you saying like that, how it resembles a weapon, like that lines up. That would totally make sense.
Could be, and it also explains why Vernestra would want to personally, oversee what's going on, because I think she senses, again, it goes back to something to tip the scales. She senses something large, and she wants to know what it is, because also, I guess the order's about to be audited or something like that from like a senator and stuff like that, which plays into, I think,
politics in Star Wars. No,
it is funny how like they're just really quick lines of like the politics of it all. It's like, I think we've had like a grand total of like 3 minutes of like Jedi, Senate, Republic politics. It is interesting though.
It is, like, the politics so far. I've actually this is the kind of like the whole like prequel politics of like, the Senate hearings and the trade disputes and the blockades. It's like, that's not the ones I'm interested in. The politics I'm interested in is like people like not stepping up because it might look bad for this, or trying to like usurp certain like dictators or senators and stuff like that. Like the whole like politics and bloodline. Was just
fascinating.
So like, that's the kind of politics I want, like the behind the stuff that the politicians don't want you to see.
Right.
Those are the kind of politics that are like really intriguing. That's the kind of stuff they're sort of getting into right now. It's like, we can't let the High Council know about this because it'll look bad on us. It'll look bad on the Senate, and they're trying to like tuck everything underneath the rug so it doesn't make the Jedi look bad. It's like, that's the kind of politics I'm interested in.
There's line from whoever she's on the call with, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the Jedi are always transparent with the Senate."
Yeah.
And it's like, well,
not so much.
Maybe to an extent, but I feel like
depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
From a certain point of view, we are completely transparent.
Yeah, it seems like something's happening right now that Vernestra does not want to. I mean, she even says it very in the beginning of the series. We can't bring this to the High Council. I mean, she's like hiding it from the Senate, gonna hide it from the High Council. Like, whatever her motivation ultimately is it because she feels like she mistreated a Padawan? Maybe not. Or she strayed away from the light at one point and did something to Chimera, if in fact that was her apprentice, and she's also suppressing all that the way Sol is suppressing how he handled Brendock. There's a lot. I feel like these characters have a lot of inner conflict that they're just not dealing with or owning up to, and now it's the roosters come home to roost, and it's like, pay the piper, So I do want to dig into, if you guys don't have any other thoughts on like Chimera, Osha, I want to move on a little bit more into the Vernestra stuff. If you guys have any more thoughts, we can. Okay.
More crazy theories.
I guess we're kind of like through it all, but I think what was interesting too about Vernestra going to Khofar and talking to Maug, she's like, "What does all this tell you about someone killed by a lightsaber?" And he says, "A powerful Jedi has fallen. You don't think Master Sol was responsible?" She says, "That is quite the accusation." He goes on to say, "Who else would possess the power to slay such a strong group?" And then she's like, something to tip the scales. And then he's also like, but why would he send us a distress signal if he did this? I thought this was interesting because she basically let Maug say the accusation out loud as if it's his idea. She didn't put it in his head, at least not literally or, figuratively. She let him get to that, and she's like, whoa. She's like, whoa, buddy. I didn't say that. You said it, And so I feel like if there's going to be like a cover-up of some sort, that does it get pinned on Sol? Because then at one point, I feel like Sol is going to not make it out of this season. I don't think he's going to make it out of the season. And like with the interview that Leslie said, something about, all these Jedi, if they've seen him, they gotta go. And it's just like, she didn't outright say, yeah. It just seems like there was a quote, I forget the exact quote, but I read it and I was like, oh man, Saul's a dead man walking, like from the line she gave in this interview. But what are your thoughts on kind of this? She brings along this, I guess, an apprentice or a knight. Brandon, did you like the guy? I heard people are like, I don't know about this guy. But what are your thoughts?
He seemed a bit annoying to me.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to hang out with him if I was another like Jedi at the temple. Like, this guy, bad vibes.
Yeah, they always ask questions like, "Where are you going? Where are we going?"
And then even after Vernestra was like, "That's a pretty crazy accusation," he was like, "Yeah, but Soul totally did it, right?" like he made like another comment that basically like saying for a fact he thought Soul did it, and I was like, "All right, chill, Soul Patrol all the way.
Yeah,
calm down.
I don't know, man.
He's a good man." But yeah, the Vernestra stuff I think is interesting. She's definitely going to come into play with all this stuff with Chimere. I think 100% at this point. I initially had the craziest theories. I was like, how far could I take this? I'm like, if they are on Octo, I was like, what if Chimere is like one of the original Jedi and he's that old, and that's why he knows where Octo is, the original Jedi temple. I don't know.
I don't. I mean,
people would hate it, but that'd be pretty
He'd
cool.
be like 10,000 years old.
Yeah.
Hey, Carbonite, bro.
I mean, look. Okay, hey, that could be a thing. I
One
guess.
guy from Jedi Survivor or whatever.
Oh yeah, Dagan Gera. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He went from High Republic to, the Dark Times.
Imperial.
Yeah.
Imperial Age.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even think about that. That's possible. Shit.
I don't know. Or he's just Plagueis and he's just really old. Figured out how to stay alive forever until he gets killed in his sleep.
Right. Any other thoughts on what's going on here, Andrew, with Vernestra and kind of what the game she's playing?
I think this whole pinning on Soul is the out. Because the whole thing's like, how can like this happen with like the whole like Ki-Adi-Mundi thing? Like, the Sith's been extinct for millennia. It's like, I think this is the out. They pin it on somebody else, and like Vernestra doesn't interact with Chimera at all. This is what I'm thinking is gonna happen. Like, doesn't interact with Chimera at all. It ends up getting pinned on Soul, and like they either kill Soul or they apprehend him, and they deal with him, and they're like, all done.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pursue it anymore. We can't let the highest council find out about this. Yada yada yada. Politics, and it's just shoot under the rug for the next 100 years, and everything else plays out the way it does. Because for the longest, like the entire series, it's like something's gonna happen. They're not gonna discover this guy, and there needs to be some way to explain why they don't go pursuing another Sith Lord.
Right.
It's like, well, there's the out. Pin it on another Jedi. Make it look like they think somebody turned on them and all that, and then like they move on from it, and they're lazy about it, and they don't pursue like more towards like there's clearly something deeper is going on, but we're not going to pursue it because we can't let anybody else know about it. So I think that's what's going to happen. If I'm going to theorize about it, it's like because it's either they're lazy about it, they don't want to pursue it more, or they cover up everything and they don't tell anybody about it.
Yeah.
So I think the more likely is they're just going to pin it on Soul. He turned on us, and that's all that happened. He turned on us. All these Jedi are dead because a really powerful Jedi Master just went to the dark side, and we dealt with him.
Yeah, I could totally see that angle, and in introducing like he just never, people are finding out Brendock, and that's why he didn't want people to find out what happened on Brendock or whatever, and then like Vernestra could be like, here's what really happened, and Soul didn't want it to come out, and people are finding out, so he did what he did. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah.
I it's really going to be, that's the Vernestra of it all is really interesting because she is a book character, a lot older than when she is in the books, but it's like, how far do you go with this character with like, in the book series, you have a lot of story to tell if you wanted with Vernestra. It'd be really interesting to kind of like give her a conclusion in the show. I don't know. It's interesting what they might do with her. And because you would just view her like, I don't know, like I haven't read the books, but I would imagine you would view Vernestra in a different way, or you just be like, it would be like watching the prequels again, knowing Anakin's fate of like, oh man, this guy is gonna do some bad stuff. I don't think Vernestra. Some people are surmising that she's a Sith Lord or whatever. I don't think that's the case. That's the case.
Crazy.
That would be really crazy.
Although I wanted to add to that, like, I don't know if they said like they said that there is a senator who was like didn't like the Jedi, like they kind of like touched on it in this episode, like, and I just wonder like who that senator is, like if that senator
Ravencourt was his name, but I don't know exactly his deal. Yeah,
maybe he's a Sith. Maybe they're already infiltrating the politics.
Already infiltrated, yeah.
Yeah. He's pre-Palpatine. Yeah, he's like, this is where Palpatine got the idea. I was like,
Well, maybe I don't know. I could believe that for 100 years the Sith were in politics, and it took them that long before one of them could convince everyone to elect them chancellor.
We kept trying for 100 years; they wouldn't do it.
Like I believe that. Like it's hard. You try running for president of the galaxy, bro. See how easy it is for you.
Took a trade embargo for me to finally get elected.
Right, that's all it took.
Yeah, he saw the Nemoidians. He was like, jackpot, yes.
They'll do everything I say.
Well, he's like, well, first, we got to build up the Trade Federation, so they're big and powerful enough that a blockade would really, wreak havoc. So he's got to build up the Trade Federation just to tear it down.
They're like, they're really like poor in this era, aren't they?
It seemed like
episode
it.
One, it seemed like they didn't have like huge like armadas like they did. in the prequels.
I mean, the company 100 years prior from the prequels, I guess, is got to do a lot of work to get to where they're at.
You got to build up that Tesla stuff.
Right.
Plagueis shows up. He's like, have you guys heard of battle droids? Thankfully, I'm a part of the banking clan. Here's $100 bajillion. Go make an army. Yeah. I knew I was going to say something else, probably stupid, but I can't remember what it was.
Okay, well, we can't wait to hear it then. I think I had one last thing on Vernestra, but I just think there's got to be a connection between Chimera and her, for sure. The whip, she even said, at first when they discovered May, killing Jedi, she's like, even I know this is someone, even a Jedi taught her. Like, she was trained by a Jedi, which is true now that we know that Chimera was once a Jedi. So that is accurate. Her assessment was accurate. And it's just so maybe it's because she trained this particular, fallen Jedi, which, is not new in Star Wars for a fallen Jedi to become a Sith. We've seen it a few times now, so I know some people are like, how could be a Sith, and like I know Kevin talked about the Sith eyes and all that stuff and Force lightning, but I mean, it's Sith are much more than that, and it'd be interesting too to see the eyes. Would be cool, but I don't think because we don't see that doesn't mean he's not Sith. I said this a few weeks ago too, and I'm curious where you stand on this, Andrew, watching the show. I decided to really take everything at face value. It's fun to theorize and go down these rabbit holes, and I do it still every week with the show. But at the end of the day, I always come back and I go, he said something might call me a Sith. I'm gonna buy into the fact that he is a Sith. And then you also, read some of the interviews, and they keep talking about a Sith Lord and infiltrating, and they refer to Chimera as a Sith in these interviews. I'm like, okay, he's a Sith. I do like the Knights of Ren origin story with him. I think that's pretty cool. I still think both could be true. I don't know, Andrew, how do you receive what the show gives you in terms of, do you take it at face value, or you're like, they're trying to lead us one way and go to the other?
It's like kind of like that Game of Thrones thing. It's like, if I don't see a dead body, they're not dead. Right. It's like, I need him to come out and say, I am a Sith.
Okay.
Like, because they keep dancing around these things. Like, they say it without saying it. They sort of allude to it, and the whole born without a father thing. Like, okay, but they didn't explicitly say how they did it, so you can't jump to conclusions. He sort of danced around like, hey, you might call me a Sith, but he didn't come and say, hey, I am Sith. Until he actually does something like that, it's like, I'm not gonna jump to conclusions. I'm gonna wait for the show to spell it out for me, because they've been doing it the entire series. They've been dancing around things, and on purpose too, because the whole Kylo Ren theme popping up at the end of episode 5, it was put there on purpose. Yeah, put there for a reason. We just don't know the purpose yet. Ki-Adi Money being in episode 3. put there for a reason.
2.
Was it 3 or 2?
2, I think.
2 or 3?
Or
I thought it
4.
was 3.
4.
4. Yeah, 4.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, whatever episode he was in.
Yeah.
He was put there. He wasn't just like, hey,
Right.
he's there. You could, if it was just he just happened to be there. It could have been any Jedi. It could have been Plo Koon. It could have been anybody. They specifically put him there for a reason. We just don't know the reason yet.
Yeah.
So it's like until he outright says he's a Sith, or like we see him in front of his Sith master, and until he spells that out for me, I'm not gonna. If he ends up being like the first Knight of Ren, or it's like that could be a really cool angle, but it's like I'm gonna hold my judgments until we get answers to everything, because like they've been doing the entire series. It's like somebody did something, they're doing this, somebody did that. Why is this person there? It's like they're purposely putting all these things for us to like speculate on, but there's a deeper purpose to it. So there's a reason why he hasn't outright said I'm Sith. He just says you might call me a Sith. So
Yeah,
I'm just gonna wait on.
I was kind of the mind too of like, if you really wanted to ruffle some feathers, just float out the idea, Sith, and then it'd be like, well, what? Because they haven't heard about them in like 900 years at this point. Which is also, I was gonna say too about Mog, that he immediately goes to fallen Jedi, not a Sith, because they haven't seen him in 900 years at this point. Why wouldn't be the first thing that would come to his mind? Because you can tell they deal with fallen Jedi, but just because you're a fallen Jedi does not automatically make you a Sith. So even though us, the audience, are like, the Sith are around, like you should be thinking of Sith, but that's not where they're at, because I haven't thought about. Well, I don't know. I can't come up with an example right off the top of my head, but I was going to think of like, I can't think of like, I didn't want to. Never mind. I'll say it after the show. I'll say it after the show.
Say it, Frankie.
I was like, I haven't thought about Nazis in old sense, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, wait a minute. Actually, fuck.
Yeah, and that's something I'm curious about. It's like, do they teach about past, like...
Yeah.
Like, in, like, as you're learning in Padawan, you have to learn about the history of the galaxy and the history of the Force. Like, do Sith ever come up in those conversations? Or is just like, we're not gonna tell anybody about that?
We don't need to worry about it. They did it, with.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, are they being lazy again and not teaching them about Sith, and for the purpose of them not trying to prevent their pupils from falling to the dark side, or do you teach them that to prevent? It's just this weird things like, is that on anybody's brain? Or is that why nobody's immediately going, oh, Sith Lord?
Right.
So it's just one of those things. It's like, I don't know how long we know it's been 1,000 years since anybody's ever seen, so maybe they just forgotten about him, or do they continue to teach them like, this is the history of who we defeated,
right,
and this is what, because I think it's forgotten that like the Jedi Temple was built upon another Sith temple, right? So it's like,
I don't know.
But yeah, and in Rise of Skywalker, Beaumont Kin or whatever his name is knows all about the Sith. He's just a civilian.
This guy, 50 years, knows all about us, but like our actual pupils don't know anything about them.
He's like cloning, dark science. The Sith were weird. Like what?
Yeah.
You know, Beaumont Kin was one of those guys, those history friends. Like, did you know that back in these days they used aqueducts and all this nonsense?
Yeah, the ancient Romans had indoor plumbing. Did you know?
He's that friend.
Yeah,
it's just so funny. Like not to like knock on like the movie or anything, but like even like Kerry Russell's character. What's her name?
Why can't I? Zori
Bliss. Right?
Yeah, this Zori Bliss. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah.
She was like, "Who do you know that speaks Sith?" Like she even knows about the Sith.
Yeah.
But then like you meet like Han Solo in A New Hope, and he's like the Jedi. That's fake.
Yeah.
I mean,
look, the universe is vast, and not information gets everywhere. Sure, but come on, you're the Jedi. You talk about the Sith.
Yeah, you gotta know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I still think it's suspicious that Chimera, he literally said that he has no name. He's like, I don't have a name, and I feel like he should have been like, I'm Darth so and so. Or something like that. It's
Maybe.
Weird that he wouldn't have a name.
I am curious because he's definitely like, if it does turn out that he is like a fallen Sith like apprentice, like I want to know what his Darth name is.
Yeah.
Just I just want to.
That'd be cool. But then the Knights of Ren stuff, I think I noticed it like when I first watched episode 5. I want to say at least 2 times, but I think maybe 3 times you hear the Kylo Ren theme throughout the episode, and then For some reason, after episode 6, I just watched all the way through the end of the credits, and at the very end of the credits, you hear it again.
They weave it in there. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So
And his helmet does like flare
Does a
out
little-
like,
yeah.
like Kylo's
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So it's like, like I said, these are purposely put there for a reason.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
like we just gotta wait.
Yeah, you're right. We gotta wait.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say, to speak to the theory of that they're going to pin it all on Soul. I have a very hard time believing that Yoda is going to believe that. Like he's like, oh yeah, Soul turned to the dark side. I buy into that. Whatever. I feel like
I
Yoda's
mean-
too smart for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I mean, Yoda's what, like 600 years old at this point? Around there?
9,
roughly?
8,
That'd be close to 800.
Maybe. Yeah.
Would he be?
think.
I think so. Because he's around 900 years old in Return of the Jedi.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't like the God.
So he'd
who
be
was
like
it? It was-
850 something
was
into
out-
the prequels.
It was Alex and Molly that did this like thing. Like I bet like he's like rounding his numbers up. Like I've been treating Jedi for 800 years,
Yeah.
and it's like turns out it's more like 600.
right.
He's just exaggerating, just like to prove a point. Like
Could be.
So who knows? He might.
Bottom
be
line is
younger
the dude's
than
old.
he- Yeah.
I just want to be.
Once you get past a certain point, you stop counting years.
I just want to be a fly on the wall for that meeting. I'll be like, oh, Master Yoda. Anyways, Soul turned to the dark side and killed like a dozen Jedi. Be like, probably should have told me about that.
Better
I
that
just
we
finding
keep
out
you in the
now?
dark, Yoda. Just plausible deniability. Yes.
When does he get Grandmaster rank? Because that wasn't an official thing until recent, right?
That I'm not sure.
Or was that always a
of.
thing? That's one of the, because like I remember reading in a book, it's like, oh, Grandmaster Yoda. It's like, oh, so it's official now. He is Grandmaster Yoda. Like I want to know when he got that title, because that's cool. He's old enough to get Grandmaster.
But yeah, Mace Windu does so much talking in those meetings. What's that about?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was one of the things of the prequels. It's like all the council meeting. It's really just 3 people talking, and everybody just like,
according to my quick Google here, Master Yoda was the last Grand Master of the old Jedi Order, holding the title as early as 82 BBY. So
Okay.
right around this
right around this
period.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's-
He uses Soul's fake betrayal to leverage a promotion.
Right. Speaking of Soul, let's wrap up here with talking about the Soul Maid dynamic, or part of the story, which I thought could have been a whole different episode, separate episode with the Vernestra stuff. Again, just my criticism of this episode in particular. Starts off with Soul trying to send a communication, and he's like, "Yeah, my team's all dead." And he talks about there's a much larger threat. We were ambushed, and then meanwhile, May is like trying to creep up on him with a dagger, like to kill him. I'm still wondering why she wants to kill him now, even though she knows that Osha is alive. My thought is that, well, Osha left her for Soul to become a Jedi. So if Soul's not around, then maybe Osha will, it's kind of demented thinking that Osha would come back. Well, Soul's gone, I might as well go back to my sister May. I don't know. I'm still a little iffy on May and her motivations and her character. It is what it is. Hopefully by the end of maybe next episode, with presumably a flashback with Brendak, we'll get more light on the character. But it was interesting too, because in this interaction, Soul's just like, hey, take the controls real quick. I gotta go check on something. Do you think at this point he knew it was May, because he didn't even turn around and he could sense that she was creeping up behind him? If you know that, would he be able to sense her motivation in terms of, I'm going to try and kill Soul right here? Brandon, what do you think?
I kind of got the impression from when I was watching the episode, because like right as he stuns May, we see Basil is like right there with him. And I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder if it happened that quick, where like he's about to like walk up to like the bridge of the ship with May. Basil just like runs up out and over and goes, "That's May," and then he goes, "Oh crap!" I don't know. I saw some other people thinking about it on a much deeper level, where it was that conversation about Pip, and he was like, he's like, "Well, that's not the Pip that I know that Osha loves. Clearly."
Yeah.
This person does not care about this droid as much as they should, so I'm thinking it's May. Yeah, that's all I got.
Well, when does he like aggressively? He aggressively hugs May before that, though.
That's like right as they enter orbit.
Something
Yeah,
like
right.
that.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's well, I kind of think so. Sol has like this emotional moment by himself, in the ship where you can tell he's thinking about the people that he lost, and you can see him like going through, like, I feel like compartmentalizing of like what happened. I'm gonna mourn them right now. Now I'm done with that. I have to put that away. They are one with the Force and all of that, so that I can have a clear head and proceed, on what I got to do now. And I think maybe in that time, I think he might come to the realization that, all right, now that I have a clear head, that's not Osha. This is May. I don't know. It's hard to tell when, like, to figure out like when he did, but I definitely think he knows it's May when he aggressively goes to hug her, and she's like, "What?" That's my thought. I don't know if you guys read it that way, Andrew, or when do you think he figured it out?
I think right after that whole like sequence with Basil, when he's like kicking her, and like, like after she factory resets the droid, I'm like, that's a thing. That's okay. It's canon now.
At least for a pip droid, you can, I guess.
Yeah, it's like you hold the power button and the volume button,
and you always know it's a different version of the droid when it goes red. That's like, what's its red? Yeah. It's like, different version of the droid.
Yeah. I think that's around, like, and if Basil was the one to tip her off, it's like he doesn't understand him. So it's like how?
Yeah, that's right. He doesn't.
I think it's like a combination of everything you guys just said. Is like he has that moment where he lets the frustration out and he like gathers himself. Because before that, he's all over the place. He's like emotionally and like his headspace is like all in the wrong place. And then he allows himself this brief moment of frustration. His head is clear, and then the whole sequence with Basil, it's like, oh, that's probably when it clicked with him. It's like, nope, that's not Osha. So I think it was like a series of events of leading up to that, and like you said, Frank, like May's like motivations is probably one of my biggest gripes about the show. Is like she's so wishy-washy, and it's not, and her motivations aren't always like fleshed out as much as I would like, because like especially in episode 2 of like, you're gonna leave, so I'm gonna kill you. It's like that was really quick. That was so quick, and then the whole switch back to like, I'm gonna go turn you in.
Well, really, I have a thought on that. As a kid, when she's like, I'm gonna kill you, I think we're seeing a distorted, perhaps altered version of history from Osha's point of view, from whatever Soul / the Jedi did to her. I had the theory that they mind wiped her.
That's a good theory.
In terms of whether she witnessed something or, in fact, Osha was the one that started the fire, and they were like, we're going to take that. Soul says to her, you're never going to feel like this again, And so how would you do that? Because when he believes with Osha from like inside the mountain, whatever, the next time we see her, she's waking up and she's like, what happened? I feel like, well, what happened between getting from the mountain to the ship? How did you become incapacitated? Why don't you remember? And I feel like, that could be a mind wipe thing, because also in episode 1 or 2, when they first find Chimera in the apothecary place, he goes, oh, you don't mind wipe me or whatever you guys do. I feel like that's like setting up for, that's my theory on it. I don't know if it'll come true. If it does, I'll feel pretty smart. If it doesn't, I won't care. But I don't know. Yeah, so, yeah, May's, I think we don't know the full story just because they did something with Osha, and that she's actually the one that, was controlling or being really rough with the butterfly. It was May. May was the one saying, hey, back off. Why you got to do that? I think they might have flipped her, brain in a way, I guess, in order for her to
false memory.
Reconcile what they thought was a good way to reconcile what she had been through. I don't know, but Soul's like, I'm ready to face the High Council. And he's like saying all the stuff that May has wanted to hear, or, I don't know. It's a really interesting in which direction it's ultimately going to go down and how it concludes, I guess. So, I did think also kind of the imagery too on the ship starts off, with lights,
the blue light,
and then it goes down to blue.
I thought that was
and
really
then
rad.
Once the light comes back on, I feel like May might have made a switch there of like, I'm ready. Tell me everything that happened. And like, I think this is something she's always wanted to hear in terms of confessing, their crimes or whatnot. But it is interesting that, Soul stuns her and then turns off the transponder and then jumps somewhere. I don't know. Brandon, what are your thoughts on how their whole interaction on the ship panned out, and what do you think it's leading to?
Yeah, I think it's going to lead to both May and Osha in their own ways, I think, are about to learn the full truth of what happened. And I think we could see that role reversal where the revelation of the truth leads May to the light and it leads Osha to the dark. I think Soul and May are going to come to an agreement of working together to find Osha. And when they do, I think they may not like what they find, is going to be my guess.
Could be. Andrew, any thoughts here?
I think this is the downfall of Soul.
Yeah.
Of he's trying to cover up what he did. Because if he wanted to really truly come clean, he would have kept his transponder on, gone back to the Jedi Temple, gone to the High Council. I think this is him running scared because he knows that he did something really bad, and now he's going to confess everything to the twins, and one thing's going to lead to another, and then everything just gets pinned on him. So it's like the combination of like this is the story's out on how the Jedi don't find about the Sith, and this is the downfall of the truth comes out, and now you gotta pay the piper and suffer the consequences of what you did. So I think that's what's gonna happen. I have no idea, like, where would he be jumping to? Because like
back to Brendock?
I don't know. It's like why would you jump when you wanted to turn yourself in?
Yeah, that was like So
yeah,
because I mean that goes. I think that would then lend itself to that at the time when he was communicating at first, he didn't know that was May, right? Mm-hmm. So but then after that, that's the only way I could reconcile the flip or his motivational switch in terms of I was gonna go trying to get the Jedi over here, but that was before when I thought that was Osha with me. But now I know that it's May. Okay, I'm gonna settle this once for all.
Cover up even more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah. Cover up or just finally come clean with May / Osha in whatever way that's going to happen, and then I think he's going to try and like. I think he seems like the type that would accept whatever punishment the Jedi would hand down, but at the same time, I don't think he's going to live long enough to see that happen. Which sucks because I really like Soul, but it's one of the reasons why I like Soul so much as a character is because he is very conflicted, deeply flawed, and really shows his emotions. He has from the very start up until this point too, So, he is that kind of that Qui-Gon-esque character, albeit with I think a little more emotion than Qui-Gon ever showed. At least we only didn't get that much time with him in the prequels, obviously, but. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here? And do you have any hopes or theories you want to throw out there before we close this episode out?
I think this episode kind of highlighted the issues I have with the editing. It's like it's very quick, very like the way they transition between scene and scene. Sometimes it's like that wasn't very good because like they use the wipes way too much. They do. They really do. It's a lot of wipes. It's like it's a very like Star Wars thing to do, but it's like. It's not you because sometimes like especially in the movies like it's used to show a passage of time, and it's not so much to switch from one perspective to the other, and that's like one of my gripes is like the pacing is just it would lend itself to maybe 5 to 10 more minutes of something, and also the further we get into the series, I feel like this would have for me I would have ingested this story better as 2 to 3 movies. Yeah. It would have allowed you more time to fix the pacing and not fix, but like flesh out the pacing a bit more, flesh out the characters a bit more. Because like they've tried every single episode, it's like they abruptly end. It's like, that's it? Yeah. That was a weird spot to cut it off. Like they sort of did it in a weird way to this episode where it's like, I'm going to confess everything to you. And the screen goes black. It's like, there's the end of the episode. Nope. That's not the end of the episode.
We don't put this one part
that's
in.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta show her putting the helmet on. Like that's the true end of the episode. So it's like just small little things here and there. That's like I'm hoping they like sort of tighten it up in the further we get. But like it's just these small things like the pacing, the acting, and it's just sometimes it doesn't hit as hard as it would. But like with certain characters like Chimera, ever since he was revealed on episode, it's pretty much when he was the blundering idiot, I've really like. Yeah. He's been a standout performance for me. It's like every scene he's in, it's like you said, he's like playing 3 different characters. Like the first one's the bumbling idiot, then he's like this really like tough, like wipe all over Jedi, and then it's the side of a Sith Lord that I've never really seen, like the chilled, relaxed, like hey, you can kill me if you need to, but you're not gonna,
right?
So type of deal. So like he's been like out of everybody, and Soul for that matter too have been the stand-up performances for me. But everybody else is like. They haven't met that bar for me. So it's just small little things here and there. But overall, for the series and for this last episode, I'm intrigued. I'm like, what did they do?
Yes.
They did something really bad. I need to know what they did. So, like, to that point, this show is hooking me in. It's like, the further we get into the series, like, whatever they did was really bad. And it's not something like they thought they were doing good. They knew they were doing something bad. And now they got to deal with what they did. Like deal with the consequences of what they did, like was it 16 years ago or something like that. Right. So yeah.
Brandon, any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
I think I said all my dumb theories already. I'm just looking forward to next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what in fact happened on Brendock, how it went down. Why did Kelnaka and Torben just become absolute, recluses, whatever the word is, and just, take the brash vow and then seclude himself on Khofar? And how did Saul find peace with it? Because he says that, to Osha early on in the series. Indara seemed chill with it, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens next week. That's going to be, the flashback, again, same director as episode 3 in the series. So, and actually, you know what? When the show just kind of focuses on one particular thing, I actually thought like episode 3 in terms of the structure of the episode and the pacing and all that, the editing, I thought technically on all those merits was pretty good. It's when they start trying to go back and forth is where they kind of get in their own way in a sense, where they do cut here or transition here. And, I think, they could have done standalone episodes for each of these,
I think so too,
But for whatever reason, there's a mandate of 8 episodes at 30 minutes apiece for whatever reason. Is it a money thing, a budget issue thing, a Disney mandate? I don't know. Lucasfilm mandate? I don't know. Above my pay grade, all I do is watch the show and talk about it. So if you want to hear us talk about
Star Wars,
the final 2 episodes coming up in the coming weeks, subscribe to the channel, hit like on this video. Andrew, tell the good people where they can find you and what you got going on. You just passed 100,000 on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. I have this thing that came in the other day.
That's very cool.
Wow.
100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Complete accident. Was not on purpose. Complete surprise. So, you can find us at there, youtube.com/Andrew and Nikki. We do our Radcasts podcasts almost every week.
Okay.
The life of a child is hard to do when she's just knocking on the door like, I want to come in. It's like, nope, we're recording. So, especially during summer break.
Oh, boy. Yeah, there you go.
We do our weekly podcast there. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Rogue Leader Drew. Going to be focusing more on that stuff since it's like I'm telling you off camera, like I feel obligated to do more content now that we have all these subscribers and they expect content. So keep an eye out for all that stuff. Probably some like, Blender tutorials, like VFX tutorials and stuff like that.
Nice. Brandon, you're still doing the science stuff, the space stuff, right? You got that going on, right?
Super cool stuff, man. You're way too smart for this. Every time you're like, wait a minute, what? He did that math? That's super cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, you can find me doing science-y stuff, TikTok, Twitter, at Brandon on Sci, and over on YouTube here at Brandon Hanna. I'm sure my link is also tied to this channel somewhere.
Yeah, it's in the description. On the channel. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, links for everything in the description. Also, that article I talked about from Collider, I'll put the link for that article in the description as well. It's a good read from Leslie Headland. It's an interesting interview and her thoughts on kind of the enemies to lovers type of dynamic going on with Osha and Chimere. And she even she talks about the Kylo Ren thing. She's like, yeah, we put it in there on purpose. We did. So just wait. Everything, like as you were talking about, Andrew, they've done everything. There's a purpose to these things they put in the show. And Leslie, I think, is smart enough and also just a big enough fan to pay attention to stuff like that, to put it in and to make it have purpose. Whether you agree with it or not, on the show as a whole, whatever, I still think she's taking great care of what she's done with the series. You may disagree. I don't care. That's my opinion. But that's going to do it for us here this week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Scoundrel. Scoundrel. I like the sound of that.